Serious, divorced people of Reddit, what could have saved your marriage? Being aware that marriage should be us as a unit, not me versus them. It took me a while to process the lesson, but I did better the second time around. Ooh, I feel this one. My first husband's friends told him never to compromise or let me have what I wanted, because then he would have lost control of the relationship. That went about as well as you'd expect, if the first husband wasn't a hint. I used to travel 150-200 days a year for my international recruitment job. I would be gone to Asia or Latin America for a few weeks and then come back for a week, but I was never really present when I was at the home because I was so tired. I never cheated on her when I was on the road, like a lot of my colleagues did, but that really wasn't enough to keep the marriage going. She developed interests outside of the marriage and it ended. I think I should have turned down a few of the travel opportunities with my job to balance things out and be more present. But the money was so good, I thought that would ultimately make us happy. The money was so good, I thought that would ultimately make us happy. I feel like my so kinda thinks this. They hate their job, but there aren't any in the area that can get at comparable wages time off since they've been at their job since the site was built. I don't care about money really. I want bills paid, sure, and treats now and then are nice, but my love language is quality time. So it hurts that they waste all this time and energy to trade for the money I don't really care about. I'd rather eat ramen with them every day than a fancy dinner once a week, or less. I reconcile this to myself as looking at them spending money on me as than treating me to a nice thing that they traded pieces of their life for. So in a way, even though it may be an object or a bill or dinner or whatever, the truth beneath it is that traded the thing I find most precious to bring me this thing or experience. And I'm kinda okay with that. It's not like my so doesn't give me the quality time I need, I'm just hella greedy lol. Anyway, changing my perspective on what money means to me helped a lot. If he hadn't had an affair with my best friend that I've known since the 2nd grade. Her youngest daughter is definitely his, and their daughter is 7 months younger than her daughter. The only time we are all together though was at my mom's house at Christmas time for a couple of days. I found out 8 years later that my godbaby was my husband's child. We had been married 17 years then. We tried to make it work as roommates for the kids and we had just bought our first house, but it didn't work and we had a bitter divorce. Seriously, fuck that piece of shit. She really needed to work on her mental health, and refused to do so until I had been checked out of the relationship for about 4-6 months at that point. Had to deal with 3 years of temperamental mood swings, her wanting a divorce every 6 months because I wasn't making enough money when already working 60 hours weeks. Then when I was working 80 hours weeks I wasn't cleaning the apartment, only time I was home I was asleep, so wasn't making it messy, and spending enough time with her, or spending it with her so I didn't have time to make a mess or clean. Then she also required me to cook and do the dishes. Finally I told her the next time she says she wants a divorce I was done because I was literally killing myself to attempt to make her happy. I was so dead inside I was done, and then when she said she wanted a divorce because I was no longer the bubbly guy that made her laugh and smile I just said okay, got up from the couch and went to bed. She was so pissed off over the next 2 months I only treated her as a roommate. She tried lying about how abusive I was. Lost a lot of mutual friends to those lies until they realized she was living with me still instead of trying to get out. They offered her rooms and her parents had a spare room for her that they knew about. All it would have taken though was her working on her mental health that just kept deteriorating and creating unrealistic expectations. I wish her the best, but I really feel bad for her future partners unless she makes significant changes. She is going to burn them to the ground with those expectations. We'll say within 2 weeks of her moving out my mental health was significantly better. Realized it when I took a lunch break, been WFH due to the virus, and stood up to make lunch I felt light, and this was because all the stress I had prior due to her had been lifted. Don't stay in a shit relationship if it is literally causing you to feel weighed down by the stress of it. Ada, thank you to everyone that has messaged, replied, or upvoted this. All I can ask since this has to do with mental health is please seek help if you need it. If a loved one needs it like my ex did, try to work them towards that, but if they refuse to, do not be afraid to walk away. It does not mean you are weak, but instead strong beyond your imagination for walking away from someone you love that refuses to seek the help they need. For men, do not be afraid to seek mental health help. You are so incredibly brave by doing so. I am proud of you for taking that step. For women, the exact same thing. So to both genders, now that we got that out of the way, take care of yourselves. You must take of yourself before you can care for others. I love you all, stay safe, and stay healthy. I'll try to reply to those messages that keep coming in. Edit 2. I appreciate the award so much, but please instead donate to a local mental health organization or something. Or even donate it to yourself and get yourself a treat on this Friday night. Like get a pizza and watch your favorite movie that always lifts your spirits. And with that, I am going to go watch Treasure Planet. My husband would do this over and over again. For 3-4 years he would get in these down moods and he literally would not speak to me for days at a time. I begged him to get help. I got help. I did everything I could think of until I had nothing else left. I was holding our marriage together all by myself. And when he said he wanted a divorce for the 100th time, I said, me too. I was 3 months pregnant with our third child. 2 months later he wanted back. I was never going back to that roller coaster. It's been 31 years now and I never remarried. He did. I am forever happy. He is more miserable than ever. But he isn't my problem. I am so sorry you went through this too. Thankfully we never had kids, just a dog that was her emotional support animal that she wanted to keep during the split. Fun story with that. However, Puppers was more attached to me since I did all the training with her, and refused to give her away during the puppy phase because she was too much for my ex. Ex finally got attached at about 3 years old because she had mellowed out. So when she finally moved out to her parents' basement, she said they wouldn't allow her to take the dog, so I had to hold her until she got an apartment. After over a year I magically got a large manila envelope with all the Puppers documentation and couldn't have been happier. Ember is my baby and keeps my feet warm while I work from home. But I am seriously sorry you went through that, but I am glad it sounds like you all are doing much better without him or another person in your life. I wish that happiness continues for years to come. I was married to the sweetest man. He was just always trying to prove himself to the world. Always unhappy with his achievements, not masculine enough, quite a nervous demeanor. I can't really explain. He also drank more and more over the years. By the time we turned 40 we decided to divorce. We chose to not have children, so we felt it was fine to just let each other be. We're still friends, although over the past 4 years since the divorce we did grow apart, of course. But we see each other regularly still. Then, a few months ago, he told me he went into therapy. Because as a child he had been sexually abused by a friend of the family. So there it is. I wonder, ever since he told me that if he had confided in me or had gotten therapy earlier, in any way let this secret out, we would have stayed together. It makes me sad, all of it. If my ex didn't give up in therapy, once we identified my personal issues and I started working on it, and things didn't magically get better, it became apparent that she had issues to work on as well. Her response was, and these words are burned into my heart forever, "No, I don't want to work on it anymore, I'm done." Edit. Didn't think this many people genuinely cared, let alone had similar experiences. I posted a lot more of my journey on my other Reddit account, but my ex found it and started to harass the fuck out of me on it, so I deleted and made a new one. Thank you for your kind words and messages. She had issues to work on as well. Her response was, and these words are burned into my heart forever, "No, I don't want to work on it anymore." I wasn't married, but had assumed a stepfather role to her two youngest kids still living at home, and we had all bonded as a family, so I thought. She went into a bout of depression that she refused to acknowledge and didn't want to leave the couch for months. During this time she also became pathologically jealous of time invested in her daughter, and accused me of having too much interest in young girls. Long story short, it was tragic for me and for the kids, but to this day she doesn't think a thing of it. I paid for therapy for her for way too long, after the point where the therapist and I agreed that I wasn't the problem. She steadfastly refused to address childhood traumas from decades ago, pretended to be fine, but acted out disruptively at random times because of them and cited them as the reason our relationship struggled. Her kids are now in their 30s and still occasionally in touch with me. 2 of the older ones haven't spoken to her in years, but by all accounts she still considers herself some kind of helpless victim in the whole affair. This is actually fairly common. Therapy is hard, and it takes both parties to commit to it. After separating, living apart, starting marital therapy, we called it quits, because we were both exhausted from the months of effort. I had one illness after another that I was having a hard time overcoming. My doctor finally said to reconcile or get a divorce. The in-between stage we were in was too stressful for my health. I ended up with pneumonia and my husband moved back in to take care of me. It took 9 weeks to recover. We used the skills we learned in therapy to continue to communicate effectively. After our first child was born 4 years later with severe medical issues, we returned to therapy twice a month to deal with the stress. 20 years later, we are still in therapy monthly and we use the time to check in with each other. We are happy together and just celebrated 28 years of marriage. I am so glad we put in the effort to make it work. All the best. No. I'm Patrick. But seriously, communication is key when trying to have a relationship with anyone. Sometimes people have bad days when you were having a good day. You gotta cut them slack and maybe talk to them about what is really going on. Also, talking about big issues in life and making sure both people are on the same page for small and big decisions. And if you aren't on the same page, see where concessions can be made from both parties and communicate about how these decisions impact everyone. Literally just asked for a divorce yesterday. Communication. She didn't tell me she was unhappy for 2 years. I didn't hear about any real thing she dislikes about the relationship until after she kissed someone else, and by then she was too unhappy to work on it. I never told her I was upset either. I would bury it until everything all came out at once. Created an environment where she always felt she was walking on eggshells and cultivated the fact that she could never communicate what she was feeling. So she felt unhappy, unloved, despite always hearing from me how proud I was of her, scratching her back, hugs, whatever, and decided to get that attention elsewhere. Both sides at fault. Communication though. Edit. Didn't intend to give a timeline here, but there's some confusion. Wife and guy worked together for 2 years. Guy's wife decides to move family 4 hours away. Guy quits job. During last 5 weeks at work, wife and guy have play dates for our respective kids. He has 2 daughters. We have a son. They go to zoo, children's museum, etc. During this time, she and him sneak out every day after work to parking lot to hug, because he'll be leaving. Weirdest part of the story for me. Last day of work, guy kissed her. She enjoys it. A week later they have another date. She brings my son to his apartment to help him pack the last of their things. They also walk a local river. Guy leaves. I confront wife about him and express my discomfort. She denies, but we both agree we're unhappy. We agree to work on it, go to therapy separately to work on some issues. She texts him daily for 4 months, "Are you okay? I miss you at work," etc., sending him screenshots of our arguments. Updating him on where we go, places we arrived at, X, talk to you soon. She literally never leaves the house. We're always together or at work. They were always with kids. I'm 98% sure it was just the one kiss physically. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. It's really hard to encapsulate all of what happened in a Reddit snippet, but I have a ton of blame in this and I get that. Usually burying things would be her not helping watch her son, for instance, and instead of me addressing it, then I would wait until it happened 10 times and then we would have a big fight. No screaming or anything, but very "you're always like this," and each time I was upset it was very visible. That being said, the few times she had given me things to work on, usually during the fight times we did fight, I was always receptive. So on one hand, I can see where she would feel the way she did, but on the other hand, my negative reactions have never been to when she brings up things that are bothering her. Also, after kissing him and telling me we needed help, she continued to text him for 4 months straight daily and texting him snapshots of our conversations. Took my son to see him for play dates. Stuff like that. I definitely have a role to play. She's a butthole. Thanks for the award. I did appreciate your insight. Not saved my marriage, but saved me from marrying, the first time, knowing my own core values and understanding my partner's core values. My first marriage lasted nearly 10 years as we existed in parallel, as parents. Our goals and, more fundamentally, our values, never aligned. We were in our early 20s when we married and didn't know enough to have those discussions. We weren't really introspective enough to even define our own values. While there's always compromise in any relationship, I struggled with the compromises that infringed on my values. I realized this in couples therapy. My second marriage has a much stronger foundation. We both value education, learning, personal growth, community, and community service, integrity, adventure, authenticity, and compassion. I feel very at peace in my relationship even though we are both driven individuals. We both turn toward each other when there are external stressors and we are committed to the relationship. We are open with each other and curious to know the other person. We admire and respect one another. It's quite nice. These are the things I've learned in 26 years, still married but almost divorced twice. Don't sweat the small shit, it's absolutely not worth it, either of you. Be willing to make compromises and look at the things from your partner's perspective, or simply in a way that doesn't place your views and feelings on a pedestal. Try your hardest not to be an uncompromising asshole. That's also not worth it, and both your lives will be much happier and more laid back. Be honest about your feelings and concerns, etc. Try your hardest to support each other and work as a team through the difficulties in your relationship and your life, and you will be able to conquer anything together. Edit. Also try to make time at least every couple of days to do something together that you both enjoy, even if it's only for an hour or two. Watch TV, movie, go for a walk, eat out, paint Warhammer, listen to music, whatever, just something you will cherish those times later and it will bring you closer together. Nothing. We grew apart. It was, however, the most amicable relationship, marriage, childbirth and divorce that you could imagine, even 10 years later. Hell, I go to Spain and stay in their house. I'm best friends with my ex-father-in-law. We often holiday together, and they do the same when they come back to this country. Grown adults don't need to be bitter to split up. They don't need to be nasty to each other after parting. They don't need to avoid each other for the rest of their lives. And there doesn't need to be anything wrong for you to realize that, even after a decade and a kid, it just isn't working anymore. The better question is now, would I want to have saved my marriage? We divorced very amicably and I don't look back on my ex with negative feelings. Around the time was a bit different. I did feel like a failure and was frustrated with them. Basically, I wish we had just waited a lot longer to decide to get married in the first place. My ex was like a good friend that I shouldn't have really been married to, just been good friends with. I don't know that they really wanted to be married to anyone, and I'm not sure we were quite the right marriage pair. I've since realized that my parents were right. If you're with someone you could be in a good marriage with, waiting won't hurt anything. It doesn't seem like the problem was that you guys didn't hire a maid. It seems like the problem was that he expected you to do everything while he sat on the couch smoking weed, and that is the fundamental problem. Even if you both work full-time jobs, the fact that it was expected that you do the cooking and cleaning after work while he smokes pot on the couch says a lot about how he values you as a partner. No wonder it didn't work out. It has nothing to do with house cleaners and handyman, and everything to do with how he didn't value you as an equal partner. A lot of personal growth on my part before getting married. But that would have prevented marriage rather than divorce. The first time, a driver's license might have saved us. We met in college, married in grad school, and the what's next started looming. He had a humanities PhD and was happy being a barista on an edge of town with no bus service, and he had no desire to learn to drive. Somehow that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I have to drive you to and from work every day because you just don't want to learn to drive yourself? Obviously the issues in the marriage were much more complicated, but I remember that argument being one of the last. The second one, not sure anything could have saved that. He had crippling insecurity that resulted in seeking validation from other women, and lying about everything he could conceivably lie about out of weird self-protection. He lied about making a sandwich for lunch when I knew we were out of bread. Found Tinder on his phone for the third or fourth time, just to make friends, and I was done. The third one, JK. Hasn't happened. Better communication, better active listening, not putting video games or sporting events above me and our 2 kids, keeping his dick out of other women, not pushing for a swingy lifestyle, not going through my phone because he thought I was guilty of the same things he was, keeping his mom and mommy issues out of our marriage, not being so controlling. Me, better communication, not thinking that having kids could fix him, not allowing my ex-Mill to be as involved as she was, realizing we only truly got along when we were high, recognizing the signs of his controlling behavior when they started, listening to my mom when she said it was a toxic relationship. Ada, Honestly, we never should have gotten married. I was put in a position where I had nowhere to go at 18, besides moving in with him. We were truly never really a good match. Our love of wheat and metal music is basically what our relationship was based on. We weren't good for each other, and we didn't help each other grow as people. I was afraid of him when he was angry, so I had a hard time standing up for myself. I put up with a lot of bullshit to avoid confrontations. I checked out of our marriage about a year before it ended. We tried moving away from the awful area we lived in hopes that we could fix our relationship. It took less than a month for me to realize it wasn't possible. In good conscience, I couldn't kick him out without a car or a place to live, especially with having young children involved. I had to wait until we got our income tax return before I ended things. I knew our marriage was over in September that year. We got our tax return towards the end of February. To be honest, I started an emotional affair in December of that year. I knew it wasn't right, but again, it happened. There was a lot in life that I was missing that I found with someone else. I am now disgustingly happy in my second marriage, and we are awaiting the arrival of our first child together in the next 3 weeks. Our communication is fantastic. He puts me and my kids first in his life, unless someone needs him more in the moment, and he wants to see me be the best me that I can be. We've grown a lot together and we make a great team. Neither one of us needs to be high or drunk to be happy with the other person. We always check in with each other to make sure we're happy where we are. More communication with me and less focusing on her family problems that she always tried to solve for them. My ex and I were together for 5 years. She was 29 at the end and I was 27. My ex's dad cheated on her mom 10 years ago, but they decided to stay together. However, they would never be able to make decisions on simple things like paying property taxes or the mortgage payment. As a result, every other month her parents always argued and end up threatening about leaving each other and whatnot. Where my ex would then go over every day for a week to try to be the middle person and talk to them individually to calm the waters. Her sisters were ages 21, 23, 25 and all had bachelor's degrees with full-time jobs. However, they chose to never want to contribute for paying bills or anything. As a result, her parents paid their cell phones, internet, car insurance, and her mom would cook for them. What caused everything to end was when my ex-parents wanted to buy a new house. They asked her siblings that live with her parents if they could co-sign on the loan. They all said no because they didn't want the responsibility. As a result, my ex volunteered to do it. I was supportive with the condition that her parents would charge her siblings rent of $500 to lighten the load on her parents for the mortgage and other bills. This all took place in Texas, so the $500 seemed reasonable. Her siblings said no and the parents refused to enforce that. However, her sisters loved to live this unrealistic life of having nice things, going out to eat, driving 30 miles for a coffee at some hipster coffee shop, and all bought new cars in the previous years. So clearly money was no issue. A little bit of effort on his part. I'm a touchy-feely person. If you want to make me happy, just let me cuddle up into you. New BF gets that and does this on the daily. For the last 2 years of our marriage, my husband barely touched me. Not even an arm around the shoulder. There was about a foot of space between us when we went to bed. I will happily do 90% of cleaning and household tasks if my so is regularly giving me the physical affection that I need. The ex just didn't get that. So on top of no physical touch, he did not do any cleaning around the house, never made dinner, never took out the garbage, nothing. Any type of effort into changing any of that and I would have stayed, at least for a little longer anyway. But I'm happy now, and getting everything I need, so I guess that's all that matters. Communication is first. Not just talking, but actively listening. Compromise. He was very one-sided. His way only. Not even his way or the highway, because he won't let me leave. His way only. Every single issue that came up I would communicate until my face turned blue, but he refused to acknowledge my side of things. He wanted what he wanted. The end. Intimacy. I just wanted to feel loved and desired. Honestly, I could put up with all other stuff. But not feeling appreciated or valued and never being touched had ruined my self-esteem. I feel as though I lack any value. My opinion hasn't mattered, as seen in point 2, and I'm not even desired. I can't remember the last time he even touched me. Her realizing that the things I experienced during my childhood weren't my fault and didn't make me crazy or less of a man. Her realizing that it is wrong to hold my prior suicide attempt from me dealing with my childhood issues over my head for almost 20 years and, during one difficult time, encouraging me to try again. Her realizing that her mother sexually assaulting me was not my fault and not something I should be punished for every day for over a decade. Myself not fucking up for the first half of our relationship would have been huge. I have no excuses, fucked up past or not. Myself moving on sooner from the anger at my past and then present abuses. Even in my 12 good years I was quite the ass in response to her being quite the cunt. Some relationships are doomed from the start. We made it almost 20 years where either one of us had every reason to leave. I am thankful for the family we made. I'm a child of divorced parents and my dad is trash. My mom isn't great either but my dad is worse. Their marriage was bad but the divorce and aftermath worse. We were thrust into poverty because my dad was the main breadwinner and he was cheap, so he didn't pay the child support properly. She spent too much money so me and my sister never saw a dime of it if he did send it. If we had moved into a bigger house I think we would have been fine. He refused to let us move to a bigger house in a nicer neighborhood, even within the same town. That sounds dumb but we were in a less than 1,000 SQFT, 2-bed 1-bath home with 2 parents 2 kids and a big dog. Tiny kitchen with 1 countertop. School district was okay. I was bullied though and I have a lot of trauma from that town. It was honestly unbearable. We were on top of each other constantly. They had no privacy, we had no privacy. They'd wake us up in the middle of the night with their fights. We couldn't get away. He would scream at my mom that if she asked to move again he'd divorce her. He divorced her anyway. Now my mom and sister are still stuck in that shoebox of a house in an increasingly rough neighborhood. He's in a huge 3-bed 2-bath house in a beautiful neighborhood by himself. Obviously there were other issues. Money issues. He cheated on her time and time again and is cheating on his current, very nice GF. Issues galore. But the lack of space and privacy drove us all utterly insane. Communication has already been mentioned a lot so I'm going to toss in respect for what each person brings to the relationship. We tend to inflate what we bring and downplay what the other contributes. Let's use a generic, if maybe outdated, example. One person goes to work and earns the money while the other stays home and cares for the kids' house. The worker thinks they have the harder job because the responsibility to provide resources for the family is all on them. They see staying home and hanging out with the kids as the much easier task. The caregiver thinks they have the harder job because there is no start and end time. They are always on duty 24/7. They see going to work as a nice change of scenery, getting to interact with other adults and sitting all day at a desk. Both roles are critical and they need to make sure they respect the value and challenges each role brings and faces. Lack of respect will erode the feelings of unity and eventually lead to a breakdown, especially when the key component, communication, is not present. If your sex life is waning and there is no medical cause for it, then that is your wake-up call that you are not on the same page with your partner any longer. P.S. The roles can be very different. One may be the dreamer that brings fun into the relationship while the other is the planner that makes sure the bills are paid. One may be the artist that makes the house a home while the other is the engineer that keeps the pipes from leaking. The list is endless. I don't think anything could have once it got as far as it did. He was using hard drugs, bringing people who absolutely terrified me into our home, bringing other women into our home and sleeping with them. When I found out about the women and confronted him, he got physical with me. That was the end. Haven't seen him since except the divorce hearing and my life is better off. Learned that you should not get married due to religious pressure from both families. Also learned that if we have children later, they won't be raised as sheltered as my ex was. He simply didn't know how to interact with the world around him, indulged too much, and fell too far. I feel for him, but it's been years and from what I hear, he's worse even off now.